What do you think of what we're hearing so far, what the expectations are, and overall what you think is going on?
Yeah, I think it's a revolving door on the executive side. And I think it just speaks to challenges. We think Everest-like challenge that they're going to have, especially in the second half, hitting those numbers. I think 2Q, they missed their guidance, in our opinion, in terms of units, about 85K. But it comes down right now. Profitability is going to almost be an impossibility for them as they go into 3Q. That's the issue for the street here as they go into the second half.
You know, the executive losses, there's been a turnover for a long time there. They've been able to muddle through and gotten by with that. You think that will continue?
I do. I mean, I think what's starting to happen is, I wouldn't say the clock struck 12, but you're really now starting to see from a demand issue, that's really what Tesla's facing. And I think fundamentally they're trying to do it while cutting costs. So you see in terms of Europe, what's happening in China. Right now, they're trying to balance a lot of things, and I think that's starting to have a pressure, not just on the fundamentals, but all comes down to demand and profitability, and I think that's investors right now. It's a glass half-empty view. Your
price target is just above where the stock's trading right now, $230. So you think all of this has already been baked into the stock price?
Well, I think it's baked in, but what we're cautious on is potentially another leg down, specifically with that guidance number. I think they're going to have to rip the Band-Aid off and lower guidance for units for the year. I think those are things that they could hit it, in my opinion, are wrong. And I think that fundamentally what we're looking to see in terms of demand into the second half, especially in Europe and China, which are lackluster.
Hey, Jeff, I know you look at this from a broader perspective of leadership overall. And I know you've been very concerned with what you've seen. I still come back to the idea, though, that Elon Musk is probably the biggest problem for Tesla, but also the greatest asset the company has.
Yes, it's definitely a double-edged sword. And I listened to some of the challenges that I don't know, Dan Ives or Phil would have coming on so frequently to talk about the Tesla story, and yet we never have to worry that they're going to be disappointed because of what you point to is Elon Musk always guarantees there's going to be an interesting news story for them every day. And we consider what Musk does. You can list the Ds. The demand saga is always very confusing. The departure issues are very confusing. The issues having to do with his regular delusions and distractions that he comes out with. The debt issues or the board's denial or this death watch that we have going. And by the way, I don't think we are looking at a company on the verge of death. I don't think that either Phil or Dan would say so. It's sort of like Mark Twain in 1897 saying the rumors of my death are greatly exaggerated. But there's something happening here, and there's a shell game that Elon Musk has going on, and every one of those D terms is a whole saga in itself. The demand is not going to be what we say it's going to be. There's debt coming up, about $500 million that's not covered this November, not to mention running out of cash end of the year. The demand, pent-up demand, Andrew used the term earlier this morning of a kind of a sugar high, that we know that the lingering incentives and other reasons have led to perhaps they'll squeak through with some good numbers today or tomorrow when they drop down from the heavens. But by the end of the year, there's no way they're going to hit 400,000 vehicles.
Jeff, calling it a shell game is kind of a big charge. The people who have been shorts on Tesla have not seen this play out. When do you think things actually materialize, or is there a point where you can say he's a success or a failure?
Obviously, he's a genius, and we know that this is a board that considers him to be a genius. And yes, he can land a satellite on a small device in the ocean. He can take a rocket ship back in there. And yet we see it's disappointing on so many fronts. Even his solar city has dropped from #1 to #3. But these diversionary moves that he's going to come out with a chitty bang bang type submarine car that we learned about the last time he went on with investors, or the insurance company, or we're going to have 1 million robo-taxis this time next summer with no evidence, of course, at all to support that. Or that he tells us at the end of the year, last year, December, we're going to have consecutive quarters of profits here on out. We see that didn't happen, as we have, I don't know, what, $700 million of losses last quarter. And Dan, points out that, he's disappointed. So is everybody else. So these are diversionary moves. That's the shell game here. Not that he isn't a genius. Ann Wang was a genius with Wang Labs, and so is Ken Olsen with digital equipment. For that matter, so is Nikolai Tesla was a genius. He died as a penniless hermit in a hotel room, but he created Tesla himself. It created wireless and remote control and all kinds of things.
Jeff, I want to ask you and Dan, though, about what has been described now as a cash crunch. So we will get to the end of the year. There are cash payments where the cash has to go out the door. Is there going to be enough money to go out the door?
Well, I mean, they just raised on the convert, but in our opinion, they're going to have to go back to the market.
So you think there's another raise coming?
Yeah, I think in the next 9 to 12 months, they're going to have to raise probably another $2 billion.
What is the appetite among investors for that next raise?
Well, I think patience is wearing thin, and I think what you're going to start to see is that capital is going to come more at a cost. And
so what's the cost? How does it dilute the shareholders? What's going to happen here? Is it going to be convert? What do you think the setup becomes?
Yeah, I think the setup really comes, can they hit profitability second half? If they hit profitability, then that capital raise, that additional capital raise maybe comes off the table. But in our opinion, that's where that $1 to $2 billion of capital they're going to have to raise, probably another convert, because at this point, the issue is debt. The albatross around Musk's neck is the debt, $10 billion of net debt. And that's why what Jeff is saying, which is exactly...
All of those things in April, though. There was supposed to be all this debt that came due. There was supposed to be all this potential for issues that came up. And that
oh,
didn't
Becky,
materialize.
Dan was about to compliment me. Dan, go ahead.
Well, no, what Jeff's talking about is that the math doesn't lie. And I think fundamentally that's the issue, is that the debt is really what's squeezing Musk and Tesla. And that's why you're seeing these departures, because they're trying to have to do this. But also
the departures are incredible, by the way. Nobody watching this show can name any tech company, any auto company, any who's had these kind of departures. If you go through the list of these, most of these people, they hardly stay a year or two. There's some 400 in the last 3 years. Every time I come on, I'm talking about the 50 who have recently left. You go through it, it's incredible. And they all left other great automakers to come here. And where did they go? To great other places. After a while, the board's got to ask a question. What is it behind all these departures? 60 of them already this year.
Many of them, they basically come, have a cup of coffee, and leave.
And you think it's just such a tough environment?
Because they are trying to do something that's almost impossible right now, where they're trying to grow demand. You look what you're doing in Giga 3 in China as well as Europe, and cutting costs at the same time, and that's the issue.